Never thought the day would come when my own son would look me in the eyes and question whether I still knew what I was doing. It wasn't anger that hit me first. It was the realization that he had been preparing for this moment far longer than I had ever noticed. If you've lived through something like this, share your story below. Evan arrived earlier than he said he would. He walked through the doorway with a stack of folders tucked under his arm, acting as if this was just another routine visit. His smile felt rehearsed. "Dad, we need to get some paperwork sorted." "It's nothing big," he said, setting the folders on my kitchen table. He tapped the cover of the top one. "It'll help us manage things if anything ever happens." The pitch was vague, and before I could ask what he meant, a harsh buzz tore through my hearing aid. The pitch spiked high enough to make me flinch. Evan paused, eyebrows pulling together for a split second before he spoke again. "You okay? That thing giving you trouble?" The noise didn't fade. I slipped the 8 out and turned it over. A thin metal shard glinted near the battery slot. It didn't match any piece I recognized from past repairs. Years of handling tools told me when something didn't belong. Evan cleared his throat. "Dad, can you look at the forms? Just sign the first 2. They're for financial support. Standard stuff." He nudged the papers closer. My attention stayed on the odd part lodged in the device. A strange weight settled in my stomach. "What's the rush?" The question came out slower than I intended. He avoided my eyes. "It's better to handle it while everything's stable. You know, before things get harder. No explanation beyond that. No patience either." His foot tapped the floor with a steady beat, like he was counting seconds I owed him. The pen lay near my hand, yet something in me froze. I pushed the papers back toward him. "Not today." Disappointment flickered across his face, followed by irritation he tried to mask. He gathered the folders with more force than needed. "We'll talk again soon," he said before leaving the house. The door clicked shut behind him. That small sound lingered longer than it should have. 3 days passed with no calls. During that time, the faulty hearing aid sat on my shelf, waiting for me to take another look. Each time I reached for it, the memory of that foreign piece stopped me. Late one afternoon, while heading through the living room, a faint murmur drifted from the table. The hearing aid wasn't in my ear. It shouldn't have been picking up anything. Yet a muted exchange pushed through the speaker. Kelly's voice surfaced first. He repeats himself more than he thinks. "Get another example tomorrow." Then Evan. "We need clear evidence he's slipping. The court wants patterns, not accidents." The sound thinned, followed by a sharper sentence that cut through the static. "Just a few more clips and the judge will give us guardianship." My hand stayed suspended above the device. The conversation kept looping in my head as the room grew still around me. The words didn't require interpretation. They hit with the kind of clarity that rearranges a man's world. The moment those voices leaked from the hearing aid, my feet carried me toward the truck before any plan had formed. I drove toward Rosa Delgado's electronics store. She had repaired my radios and small appliances for years. Rosa stood behind her counter sorting a tray of mismatched screws when I stepped in. She looked up with a nod. "What brings you in today, Walter?" The hearing aid landed on the counter with a soft tap. "It's acting strange." "Can you take a look?" Her brow furrowed as she lifted it. Strange how it picks up things that aren't meant for me. The words felt clumsy, but she didn't laugh or question them. She motioned toward her workbench. "Let me open it up." Metal tools clicked together as she pried the small casing apart. Her focus stayed on the device eyes, narrowing at the exposed components. "This isn't factory work," she murmured. A thin wire led to a tiny square chip wedged near the microphone. She pointed to the solder marks. Someone added this. A prickling sensation moved across my neck. Could it fall in there somehow? Maybe during a previous repair. Rosa shook her head. No chance. This takes deliberate placement. See the way the solder trails curve? That's done by hand. She didn't soften the explanation. Rosa never sugarcoated anything. So what is it? A near-range recording mic. Cheap but effective if you want to capture nearby conversations. She set the device down and watched my reaction. The room seemed to shrink as her words settled. Why would anyone put that in my hearing aid? You tell me, she said gently. Memories of Evan's recent behavior crept forward. His attempts to draw attention to small mistakes I made, misplacing keys, repeating a story, suddenly felt strategic. Kelly's comments about checking in, more often the uninvited visits, even the way they observed every decision, all of it realigned in my mind. A string of incidents that hadn't made sense now pointed toward a single motive. Rosa leaned on the counter. You okay? Not sure. The answer came out before I could filter it. She studied me for a moment, then asked, Who benefits if you seem confused or unreliable? Silence hovered for a beat. A father doesn't want to accuse his own child of betrayal, not without absolute certainty. Rosa tapped the device again. This wasn't an accident. Someone's been monitoring you. You need to protect yourself. A long breath left my chest. What would you do? I'd turn this into leverage. If they're listening, you should be recording. She picked up the casing. I can modify this so it captures everything around you. It'll still function as a hearing aid, but the recording will run when you choose. That seems extreme. So is planting a mic in someone's medical device, she replied. Let me help you. Her bluntness steadied me more than kindness could have in that moment. She wasn't shocked or melodramatic. She simply faced the situation head-on, which forced me to do the same. As she worked, my thoughts drifted toward mistakes I'd made with Evan over the years. Long shifts, missed games, a distance that grew without either of us naming it. Parenting isn't flawless, and regret settles hardest when a child turns away. Part of me wondered whether my own shortcomings pushed him toward resentment. Another part insisted that no resentment justified this. Rosa closed the casing with a soft snap. There. It'll pick up sound when you press this small button on the side. Use it only when needed. My thumb brushed the modified switch. You really think he's behind this, Walter? Someone put that chip there. Someone who has access to your belongings. Don't dismiss what you already know. Her words landed with a weight that steadied more than it crushed. Reality didn't care about how uncomfortable it felt. Take it, she urged. Gather your own evidence. The device warmed slightly in my palm, as if urging me to accept the path ahead. Even then, doubt pushed back. If I'm wrong, then you'll have wasted a little time, she said. But if you're right, you'll need something solid. The ride home passed in a blur of questions. Every recent exchange with Evan replayed in fragments his eagerness to handle my bills, the scripted concern in his voice, when suggesting I slow down his mention of professionals who could help me manage things. All of it pushed toward one end: control. Evan and Kelly stopped by 2 days later saying they were checking in. Their timing felt calculated. The hearing aid stayed in place, recording from the moment they stepped through the door. Every small remark, every exchange, every slip captured without a single gesture from me. Evan walked through the house as if tallying items on a list. Dad, did you forget the trash pickup again? His tone carried a thin layer of concern that didn't match the way he scanned the room. Kelly stood near the counter. It happens at your age, she offered, soft enough to sound helpful, but loud enough that she knew I'd hear every word. Maybe schedule reminders. They didn't know the device was running. Their performance shifted slightly when they thought no one was watching. Evan's shoulders relaxed. Kelly's eyes stopped tracking my reactions. Small tells like that revealed more than they intended. Later that evening, when the house settled, the recording played through my phone. One particular clip froze me mid-step. Evan's voice came through, first speaking into what must have been his phone. "Yeah, we'll need that progress report on his cognitive status. The old man's been slipping a lot more." Kelly chimed in from the background. "Make sure they note the repeating questions and the forgetfulness." A pause. Then Evan again. "We'll bring him to your clinic if needed. Just send over the draft." I sat down slowly. A clinic cognitive status. No doctor had ever mentioned concerns like that. No appointment had been made, no tests done. The phrase progress report repeated in my head like a bell I couldn't silence. Had I really been repeating myself, forgetting details? A few moments resurfaced, misplaced glasses, confusion over a phone bill, difficulty recalling a neighbor's name. Those felt normal at the time. Now each one carried new weight. A question I didn't want to ask slipped forward anyway. Was my memory failing? Evan's recent behavior gained sharper edges. He corrected me in front of neighbors' details I knew were right. He exaggerated small errors. Once he even interrupted a conversation with an old friend just to say, "Dad's been a little scattered lately. We're keeping an eye on things." Kelly followed the same script. "It's just aging," she'd say, touching my arm lightly. "Don't push yourself. Let us help." Each phrase, each suggestion gentle on the surface, but pushing me toward the same conclusion I couldn't trust myself. Listening to the recording again only deepened the churn in my chest. The worst part wasn't their deception. It was how easily uncertainty crept in, how quickly doubt found a seat at the table. Rosa called as I sat with the phone still in my hand. "Walter, did anything else happen?" "There's a clinic involved now," I replied. "They're requesting a cognitive report I never knew existed." Her breath caught. "They're building a case. If they submit those papers, it'll be harder to push back. You need all the evidence you can get." A part of me wanted to throw the hearing aid across the room, end the surveillance, end the spying. Using it felt like betraying the last strings of trust between Evan and me. "I don't want this fight," I said more to myself than to her. "No one wants it," she answered. "But you can't let them decide everything for you. Not like this." Those words landed with force. A man spends decades believing his family will honor him in old age. Letting that belief collapse felt like stepping off a ledge. By the time we ended the call, the recording still waited on my screen. The rest of the clip played, and a new line surfaced, one I hadn't noticed earlier. Evan's voice lowered, as if he'd turned away from Kelly. "I'll meet with that guy next week. He'll prepare the medical file so we can move forward." My thumb drifted toward the pause button, though the audio had already ended. They were preparing paperwork to declare me incapable. Evan left his house early the next morning carrying the same leather folder I'd seen during his earlier visit. My truck trailed far enough behind his sedan to avoid notice. He drove past the main road out of Flagstaff and turned toward a strip of aging medical offices. The location felt deliberate, far from the larger clinics, far from anyone who might question credentials. His car stopped near a narrow building with a faded sign. I parked down the street and walked toward the entrance, keeping my steps steady. The small camera clipped to my shirt blinked once as it powered on. Evan didn't look around before stepping through the door, which told me he didn't expect anyone to follow. A few minutes later, the man in the white coat appeared in the hallway. No name badge, no stethoscope. He greeted Evan with a firm handshake. Evan pulled a thick envelope from his folder and offered it with a subtle tilt of the wrist. "Everything you need is in there," Evan said. The man flipped through a few pages. I'll finalize the medical summary and the cognitive decline report. The judge usually moves quickly once documents are consistent. That's what we need, Evan replied. He's been repeating himself a lot. My jaw clenched. Those moments had been normal slips any man my age might have. Yet here they were turned into ammunition. The man continued. I'll finish the full file by next week. Memory deficits, decision-making concerns, safety risks all covered. Not a single word of it applied to me. Hearing him list those terms, memory deficits, decision-making concerns, felt like someone carving out pieces of who I was. Evan nodded along, as if everything matched reality. Their meeting wrapped quickly. Evan stepped back into the parking lot and left without looking over his shoulder. I stayed put until his car vanished behind the turn. The man in the coat returned inside envelope tucked under his arm, unaware he had just been recorded. The drive home crawled. Before I could process everything Evan called. Dad, a social worker is coming by tomorrow afternoon. Just a routine check. Don't worry about it. Routine. The word stung. I wasn't informed, I answered. It's normal. They just want to make sure you're managing things well. Answer their questions. It'll help us get ahead of any concerns. The call ended without space for argument. His plan was already in motion. The next day, the social worker arrived with a polite smile and a clipboard. Evan showed up minutes later offering to help clarify things. Kelly followed behind him. Their presence felt like a wall closing in. The questions came fast. Do you manage your medications on your own? How often do you forget bills? Have you gotten lost recently? Each time I answered, Evan stepped forward. He mixed up his prescriptions last month. He forgot to pay his utility bill twice. He couldn't find his way to the hardware store. None of it was true, yet each correction twisted the conversation, painting me as uncertain, unstable. Kelly chimed in with softer notes. We're just worried about him. He's been overwhelmed. It happens at his age. My throat tightened. Not from the questions those I could handle, but from the certainty that anything I said might be dismissed as confusion. One slip, a slow answer, a pause to think, and the social worker made a note. Follow-up recommended. After an hour, she packed up her things. We'll review this and schedule a second visit. Evan gave a reassuring pat on my shoulder. This is for the best, Dad. Their departure left the house feeling stripped of something I couldn't name. Not peace, not dignity. Something between the two. Once they were gone, I stepped out to the truck, my hands shaking just enough to make unlocking the door harder than usual. The phone rested in the cup holder. The video I'd recorded played with perfect clarity, the envelope exchange, the fabricated diagnosis, every word spoken by the man in the coat. The implications settled over me, dense and cold. Evan hadn't just pushed boundaries. He had erased them entirely. Walking through the door, the house felt altered. Not physically, but in the way a familiar place turns foreign after a hard truth. A dull ache settled behind my ribs, anger mixed with something heavier. The betrayal cut through more than pride. Evan had once been the kid who waited for me on the porch after long shifts. When had that boy disappeared? Years flashed through my head, the birthdays missed, because overtime paid extra, the school events pushed aside for deadlines, the quiet resentment that grew without either of us naming it. Distance doesn't appear in a single moment. It builds unnoticed until it's the only thing left in the room. The phone buzzed. Kelly's name lit up the screen. She rarely called alone. Her tone sharpened the moment I answered. Walter, are you home? I stopped by earlier but didn't see your truck. I'm home now, I said. I'll swing back. I'm worried after the evaluation yesterday. She didn't wait for agreement. The call cut off before my reply formed. Minutes later, her car rolled into the driveway. She stepped in carrying a tote bag and a notebook. I brought some things to help you stay organized, she said, surveying the living room with an assessing glance. Yesterday seemed overwhelming for you. I answered, though the evaluation replayed in my head every rushed question, every stolen pause. Kelly sat across from me, opening her notebook. Can I ask a few follow-ups? Evan told me some things that might help the next review. What review? The second assessment. They moved it up. She offered a sympathetic tilt of her head. They had additional concerns. Her pen hovered. Do you remember what you had for breakfast today? I hesitated, not because I couldn't recall, but because the question felt rehearsed. That brief stall was all she needed. Her pen scratched across the page. She continued each inquiry, sliding into the next medication routines, bill payments, daily habits. She nodded, as if confirming suspicions I hadn't voiced. Every answer I gave seemed to feed her note-taking. When she finally closed the book, her expression softened. We're not trying to upset you, Walter. We just want what's best. The words bounced off me. Nothing about this felt like care. She left soon after, offering a parting line. The social worker will call you again. Don't worry if things feel confusing. Let us handle the logistics. Once the door shut, the house tightened again. Their constant arrivals, the probing questions, the way they watched me. It all merged into a single sensation of being managed. The phone rang not long after. The social worker's voice came through, polite but firm. Mr. Briggs, we've scheduled your second evaluation 2 days from now due to new information submitted by your family. New information, reports they had created, versions of me I didn't recognize. After ending the call, exhaustion seeped into my bones. Maybe letting the process run its course would be easier. Maybe Evan was right. Maybe I was slowing down more than I realized. The thought rose before I could push it back. The day dragged. Evening approached before the phone rang again. Rosa this time. Walter, bring me everything you've recorded, she said. If they submitted paperwork, we need something solid before this escalates. Her urgency steadied me. I'll come by tomorrow. Good. And don't delete anything, not even the small pieces. As the call ended, the hearing aid blinked. A new file had been created. I opened it. Evan's voice poured through with a confidence that snapped me awake. Once the court signs off, the house will be in our name by next week. Kelly's already planning the renovations. He laughed lightly, an easy, pleased sound. Rosa unlocked the shop before her usual hours and waved me in with a sharp gesture. Tools covered the workbench, stacked beside half-opened radios and tangled wires. She cleared a space and motioned for me to hand her the recordings. Let's lay everything out, she said, already pulling her laptop closer. We need a timeline. The hearing aid rested between us while she copied the files. One by one, each clip played snippets of phone calls, stray comments, and the exchange at the clinic. She listened with her jaw clenched, pausing only to adjust the audio. Move this one earlier, she murmured. It lines up with the first visit from the social worker. She worked fast, piecing the segments together until the sequence formed a continuous story. The pattern was unmistakable. A coordinated effort. A campaign built step by step, designed to reshape me into someone incapable. Rosa clicked on the most recent file. Evan's voice filled the room, casual in a way that made my stomach turn. Slip it into his drink. Just half a pill. He won't notice, and if he sleeps through the day, it'll look like he's confused about the time again. Kelly whispered something in response, but Evan's voice dominated. We only need a couple more examples. Then the report will match what the doctor wrote. My hand tightened around the edge of the bench. He talked about drugging me, I said, though Rosa had heard it clearly. She didn't soften her tone. This crosses into criminal territory. interfering with your medication, manipulating your cognition. This isn't a dispute anymore." The words landed with force. A strange mix of dread and relief washed over me. Someone else finally recognized the truth. Someone believed me. That small acknowledgement lit a faint spark hope, maybe, but it didn't erase the fear sitting beneath it. Evan's documentation likely looked legitimate. Judges move quickly when paperwork appears thorough. Rosa continued assembling the files. "You have enough to open a case. The recordings show intent, coordination, and physical risk. Bring this to the police before Evan pushes anything further." My phone vibrated on the table. Evan's name flashed across the screen. Then again. Then a third time. The fourth attempt came with a voicemail. Rosa raised an eyebrow. He knows something changed. The voicemail played automatically. Evan's voice was tight, almost frantic. "Dad, call me back. Right now. We need to talk about your hearing aid. It isn't working right, and you can't just ignore this. Come to the house." Another voicemail from Kelly followed. "Walter, the court will interpret your silence as a sign you're overwhelmed. Please respond. This is urgent." Their insistence crawled under my skin. The sense of being hunted subtly, politely, pressed in from all sides. Rosa folded her arms. "They're losing control. Desperate people make mistakes. Don't meet them alone." But that warning arrived a moment too late. My phone rang again. Evan this time. "Dad, get over here. We need signatures. There's paperwork the court requires." His tone left no room for refusal. A tight breath escaped me. "I'll come by." Rosa leaned in. "If you go, keep the recorder running. Don't argue. Let them talk." Her steadiness helped anchor me. The hearing aid slipped back into place and she checked the button before I left. "It's recording. Don't touch it." Evan lived only 10 minutes away, but the drive stretched as thoughts churned. By the time I pulled up to their house, every porch light around the block glowed faintly, though the sun hadn't fully set. Evan opened the door before I knocked. "Come in. We don't have much time." Kelly stood in the dining room beside a thick stack of documents. Evan gestured toward the chair at the table. "We filed the emergency petition. The court needs temporary consent from you, just for safety. Sign here." He tapped the signature line with a jittery finger. Kelly hovered behind me, watching too closely. "It's for your protection," she said. The pile in front of me was heavier than any legal form I'd handled in my life. Pages detailed fabricated assessments, false symptoms, and the doctor's forged report. Each chart twisted who I was into someone nearly unrecognizable. Evan slid a pen across the table. "It'll help the court move faster." No rage rose in that moment. Only a strange calm. My thumb brushed the side of the hearing aid, confirming the quiet pulse of the recorder. Instead of flipping through each page, I skimmed them slowly, allowing his impatience to grow. "Dad, we don't have all day." "All right," I said, letting him believe I was compliant. "I see what this is." Kelly exhaled in relief, misreading my tone entirely. After several long seconds, I closed the folder. "I'll think about it." "You don't need to think," Evan snapped. "You need to sign." That flash of irritation confirmed Rosa's warning he was unraveling. My chair scraped as I stood. "I'm not signing tonight." Kelly stepped forward. "Walter, please." "No," I answered and moved toward the hallway before either of them could block me. Leaving the house, my pulse slammed against my ribs. The air felt thin, but my steps stayed firm. Evan shouted something from the doorway, though the words blurred behind me. The truck door shut with a dull thud. My hands steadied on the wheel. The hearing aid's recorder still blinked faithfully, capturing every accusation, every threat, every attempt to corner me. The lobby at the Flagstaff Police Department felt colder than the night air I'd come through, but I walked to the front desk without slowing. An officer guided me to a small interview room where a detective named Harris introduced himself and opened a folder. "Mr. Briggs, let's start with your statement," he said. The camera clipped to my shirt sat on the table, along with the flash drive Rosa prepared. Harris reviewed the footage first. His expression stayed professional, though a flicker of recognition crossed his eyes when Evan handed the money-filled envelope to the man in the lab coat. Then he played the audio files. Each recording filled the room: Evan's instructions, Kelly's whispers, the doctor's fabricated claims. There was no doubt left to hide behind. Harris leaned back. "You've been collecting evidence for a while." "I needed the truth lined up," I answered. Speaking those words felt steadier than I expected. Not once did my voice shake. Not once did my breath stumble. For the first time in months, the ground no longer moved beneath me. Something had shifted, resolve finding its footing after weeks of confusion. He nodded toward the recordings. "This is substantial. The payment to the doctor alone qualifies as fraud. The attempt to drug you, that's a separate offense. Your son is in deeper than he realizes." The folder snapped shut with intention. "We're opening a criminal investigation, but we need one more piece before we take action. Would you be willing to cooperate in a controlled setting?" "What does that entail?" "A family dinner at your house. We'll monitor from outside. If they repeat their intentions or push you to sign anything, we move in." A slow breath worked its way through me. "I'll do it." Harris set a date for the following evening and walked me out. The night felt heavier, but the weight carried shape. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was purpose. The next day passed slowly. My hands stayed busy, but my thoughts tracked the hours until dinner. Before sundown, I set the table with simple dishes, kept the setting casual to avoid suspicion. The hearing aid remained in my ear, microphone ready. Another recorder sat under a coaster at the end of the table in case Evan tried to corner me. Their car pulled in right on time. Evan stepped through the doorway first, his smile broad yet tense. "Dad, thanks for having us," he said. Kelly followed, carrying a casserole as if it were a holiday. Her eyes scanned the room before meeting mine. "Smells nice in here," she added. Polite words masking calculation, both of them, checking whether I seemed cooperative or defiant. We sat. Small talk floated around the table, flimsy and slow. Evan's knee bounced under the table. Kelly kept glancing toward my hearing aid, though she didn't comment. Every gesture felt rehearsed. After a few minutes, Evan placed his fork down. "Dad, there are things we need to discuss. About the court petition." "I figured," I replied. He reached into his coat and pulled out several papers. "We're trying to make this easier. You sign the temporary guardianship agreement now, and the judge won't require a competency hearing. It's a smoother process." Kelly chimed in softly. "It keeps you from being stressed. This is really the best path." The act cracked here and there, forced calm, thin patience. Their eyes kept darting toward my reactions as though measuring how far they could push. The moment stretched, and I let it. Then I stood, walked to the counter, and picked up a small speaker. I set it on the table and pressed play. Evan's voice filled the room, recorded days earlier. "We get him into a nursing home, we get the house. That's how this works." Kelly's reply surfaced next. Just a few more signs of confusion. "The judge won't question it." Their faces dropped. Kelly's hand flew to her mouth. Evan lurched forward. "Dad, that's fake," he snapped. "You edited that. You don't even know how to use that thing." Another recording answered him before I did. "Slip half a pill in his drink. If he's groggy, it strengthens the case." Evan shot to his feet. "Stop playing that. You can't accuse us of something you made up." "Then explain it," I said calmly. Harris stepped through the doorway before Evan could speak. 2 other officers followed. The shift in the room was immediate shock, pushing out every other emotion. Evan Briggs. Harris announced you're being served with a warrant for falsifying medical documents, attempted interference with a vulnerable adult, and conspiracy to obtain guardianship by fraud. Evan's knees buckled. Kelly froze, fingers pressed to her lips. Harris held up the printed report Evan's contact had created. You want to tell me who signed this or who you paid? Evan didn't answer. He couldn't. His mouth opened, then closed. The color drained from his face. I stayed beside the table hands, steady at my sides. No triumph surfaced. No anger either. Just the dull ache of something finally revealed for what it was. The officers guided Evan toward the door. Kelly followed silent, her steps dragging as though she barely understood the scene unfolding around her. The courthouse hallway felt less intimidating than it had a week earlier. Maybe it was because the worst part had already surfaced, or maybe standing up for myself changed something deeper than I'd expected. I checked in with the clerk, handed over the completed paperwork, and waited for my name to be called. When the judge reviewed the documents to dismiss the guardianship petition, he asked only one question. Mr. Briggs, do you feel fully capable of managing your own affairs? Yes, Your Honor. The certainty in my tone surprised even me. He nodded, stamped the order, and moved on. No dramatic speech, no further inquiry. The truth had spoken for itself. Outside the courtroom, Detective Harris met me with a folder of updates. Evan's case is moving forward, he said. Fraud, falsifying medical records, attempted interference with a vulnerable adult. The DA added an elder exploitation charge as well. And Kelly. She's under investigation for her role in the planning. Lesser charges, but still serious. A long breath passed through me. Not satisfaction, just acknowledgement. Actions carry consequences. Some people learn that late, some never do. Harris closed the folder. You won't need to interact with him during the process. We'll handle everything. That's for the best. No part of me wanted a confrontation. Words wouldn't fix what had already broken, and apologies wouldn't stitch together the trust that had been torn apart, piece by piece. In the days that followed, silence settled between us, an intentional boundary. Evan called once from the county jail. The voicemail didn't contain anger, only disbelief, as though he struggled to understand how his plan had unraveled. I didn't return the call. Instead, I met with a lawyer and shifted every asset into a trust for my wife's long-term care. Her needs had guided my decisions for years. Protecting what remained for her felt like the only step that still mattered. Once the paperwork was finalized, I left Flagstaff for a while. The rental in Sedona wasn't large, but it offered a clean start. The first morning there, the stillness felt unfamiliar, like a world I hadn't visited in a long time. A neighbor mentioned a hiking group for older adults that met twice a week. I joined without thinking. The trails weren't demanding, but the rhythm of steady steps beside people who carried their own stories made something settle inside me. Conversations along those walks were simple, weather families, aches that linger, meals that comfort, but each exchange chipped away at the heaviness I'd been carrying. In a strange way, rebuilding the habit of talking eased the fear I'd never admitted aloud, the terror of growing old alone, of not being needed, of becoming someone others stepped around instead of toward. Repair work found me naturally. A man down the hall asked if I knew how to fix a lamp. Another needed help with a loose door hinge. Word spread quickly. Tools in my hands felt familiar grounding. Each small repair offered something steady, something I could complete from start to finish, without anyone altering the story along the way. Letters from the court arrived occasionally. Updates on Evan's case, notices about hearing dates. I read them, set them aside, and carried on with the day. There was no anger left, just a clear sense of distance. Some relationships don't end with shouting. They end when someone shows you who they truly are, and you step back, because standing closer would mean losing yourself. One evening, a neighbor brought over an old radio that hadn't worked in years. "If anyone can bring it back, it's you," she said. I set it on the table after she left, unscrewed the back panel, and examined the worn components. My hands moved slowly, tracing the familiar pathways of wire and metal. A stripped screw resisted at first. With a little pressure, it loosened. A replacement part clicked into place with a soft, tacked, small, precise final. The sound lingered in the air, a reminder that even things that feel broken can be coaxed back into function if given time and steady attention. I reached for the next component, the rhythm of the work settling into my shoulders, and let the moment carry me forward without needing anything more from the past.